For today's webinar, we are going to be doing the the ARMS Clery webinar with Margolis Healy, part 2. We had a webinar in September where we kind of jumped through just some bases of Clery, going through ARMS for reporting that data and just Clery reporting in general, but involving the experts over at Margolis Healy to answer any questions too. So we did get some questions from those webinars and just some questions through support that we wanted to go through and take care of with everybody. So for this webinar, we're doing kind of an interview style where we just go through this PowerPoint and it's kind of a question and answer type of thing. So the first part is going to be any Clery changes with the new year or anything basically with this new year getting started and some advice on that. And then we're going to jump into our side of thing and I'm going to show you ARMS on my screen and just sort of jump through the ARMS settings, what you need to do mainly for reporting Clery. We've done that a couple times with webinars, but this time we're going to be kind of brief about it, just go through a case and show you what you need to put in on that case, and then go through Report Center and then the mapping portal as well. I saw this in the chat too, if you did not see part 1, you can see it at arms.com/webinars. If you go to arms.com/webinars, you'll see all of the webinars we've had so far. Just look for the one named ARMS Clery webinar with Margolis Healy. All right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started and jump into the introductions. You already know me and Jason. I'll do a quick one for me. So my name is Devin Fowler, if you don't already know that. I am in charge mainly for the training aspects of ARMS. So if you've done a training recently, if you just became a new customer, you've probably heard my voice. You may even be sick of my voice by now if you've been to some of the 4-hour trainings. But I also handle these webinars too, and that's my job over here. Jason, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm always sick of your voice, Devin. My name is Jason Worth. I have worked here for 10 years. I'm a support manager. So if you've ever had to call in with a support question or anything like that, I run the team that responds to you. I think that's good for me. Okay.
All right, and then I am going to jump into the next page of this PowerPoint. And we've also got Mike Webster on the call, who's from Margolis Healy. Mike, do you want to go ahead and do an introduction?
Yeah, thank you, Devin. And I still want you to do my greeting on my voice, no matter what you says. You got a perfect voice for radio.
Thank you.
So as the Director for Regulatory Compliance, one of the things that I help colleges and universities do is to comply with the Clery Act. I come by some expertise there. I worked in campus law enforcement for 35 years. I was a campus police chief for 23 years at a small suburban school in, outside Baltimore. I had the advantage, I guess, of serving the campus police leadership organization known as IACLEA. I served for about 15 years as the chairperson for government relations, and in that role, had a hand in writing Clery Act regulations each of the 3 times the law was significantly amended. Also represented the college and university section of IACP. So right, wrong, or indifferent, I guess I bear some responsibility for this thing. Theory. In addition to regulatory compliance, our company provides help around organizational assessments, and we provide help with physical security and emergency management and emergency planning. And we'll talk a little bit about the synergies that we can bring to that in a bit. Dan has asked me to let you know he is not going to be speaking today.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. we're going to be talking about kind of the new year with Clery. So let's jump over. I keep having to move this, or here, you know what, we can probably fit it right there. So some initial questions for you, Mike, with the new year. Are there any changes for Clery that people need to know, people need to be aware of, so that when they're reporting it in ARMS or, you know, reporting it in general, is there anything that they need to know to do differently this year?
I don't think so. There was a giant dust up in October when the handbook was rescinded, and I talked about that on the first webinar. But briefly, our advice to clients is that the handbook continues to represent a roadmap or a recipe to best-in-class compliance. We don't know yet where the Biden administration is going to come down on this. We do know that historically, Senator Biden and Vice President Biden lent a great deal of political capital to the issue of safety and crime reduction, especially on college campuses in his role as the vice president. He led the White House effort for a collection of research and best practices called Not Alone. Lent the imprimatur of the Office of the Vice President to that, was personally engaged in that. And there's no real reason to believe that he's going to change his position on this dramatically now that he's president. Is it going to be at the top of the pile? I don't believe so. We know that he has said publicly fixing the student debt crisis is job one for higher education for his administration. And we know that within the Department of Education right now, they're trying to figure out how to get people back to school because of COVID. So I wouldn't look for any great changes here, but I do think it would be a I'm trying to be careful about how I phrase this. I do think it would be a disservice to your community to dismantle a lot of the mechanics that you've created around Clery Act compliance in the name of the Federal Student Aid Clery Act Appendix. Mm-hmm. So briefly, what they did was they took a 240, give or take, page handbook, threw it out, and created a 13-page appendix to the Federal Student Aid Handbook. Just so that we've got some sense of what this means, the appendix is 13 pages long and the regulations are 22 pages long. The goal of the handbook or the appendix would be to provide illustration, example, and guidance around how to apply the words in the regulation. What the Trump administration's guidance said was just apply reasonable definitions. And I think in the first webinar I said, so we know that the Clery Act says that something is non-campus property when it's not reasonably contiguous. The last edition of the handbook, the recently rescinded edition of the handbook, said that that was a mile. We can argue all day about whether a mile is right or wrong, but at least it was a sharp, bright line, and you could easily define compliance by taking a screenshot of Google Earth. What is reasonably contiguous in the mind of a reasonable institution at the University of Oklahoma versus New York University in downtown Manhattan? What is reasonably contiguous is going to vary wildly. And the goal of the Clery Act is to allow folks to comparison shop crime rates. Now we can talk about the sociological or the empirical challenges that are present in the Clery Act, but I think that to simply say to the 4,500 or so traditional post-secondary institutions, yeah, whatever you want to call something is what we're going to accept, is an invitation for problems. I don't think that reflects the intent of the bill.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like mainly just kind of stick to what you're doing and stick to, what you know with how you're reporting Clery right now until something substantial comes along.
Yeah, I think that, I'm hopeful that we would see some guidance probably by summer. Although COVID has reprioritized everyone's work at Ed. The handbook remains good, sound advice. Even if it's not enforceable, it remains good, sound advice on how to create a robust and highly compliant Clery Act program.
Okay, that sounds good. And then for the second question, just for the new year, do you have any tips or things that you think people should look out for since this new year has just started, or things that you would tell agencies to kind of get them to stay on track with their Clery reporting throughout the year?
Yeah, I think data, you are in a data business, right? So we, in our work, we do a lot of data audits. We're always waist deep in ARMS. We love ARMS. I want to make sure that folks remember that data is where your greatest financial risk is. If we look at the research that we've done over the last 18 or 19 years, where institutions spent a lot of money, going all the way back to Penn State. They spent the most money on crime data that was twisted up. So if we look at Penn State, Jerry Sandusky only cost them $27,500. The bulk of that fine had to do with data. The police department data is always the easy go, right? And sometimes there's a problem with burglary or something like that, but generally the bucket is full when we work with the police department. Where we see data that gets that becomes problematic is in the campus security authorities that are not the university's public safety, security, or police department. So we all know the obvious ones, right? Coaches, athletic staff, resident assistants, advisors to clubs and organizations. We lately have been working with presidents and chancellors' cabinets to get everybody to understand that there are probably giant numbers of campus security authorities in the academic affairs division. So commonly within the academic affairs division, the office that advises students with special needs and learning challenges, what used to be known as Section 504. Those folks are all campus security authorities. If an institution has assigned academic advisors that are making sure that students are on track to graduate on time, that they've taken all of their major and minor courses, those folks are campus security authorities. The faculty member who leads a trip to Dublin to study Irish folk music is a campus security authority. And at a typical institution, the number of folks in student affairs very quickly grows from scores to hundreds. I'm sorry, in academic affairs, grows from scores to hundreds. If I look at my crystal ball, the other thing that I see coming, given what's going on in the broader culture, is the emergency response and evacuation requirements that many institutions commonly miss. Where we are right now between social unrest, Black Lives Matter, Proud Boys, rioting, insurrection at the Capitol. The only reason that is not happening on college campuses is because college campuses by and large are shuttered. But what we learned in the 60s, what we learned in the 80s was college and university campuses are oftentimes the scene or the set for this kind of social change. And the Department of Education has been very clear, at least with some institutions, about the need to, for example, if you're having a disturbance or you're having a potential disturbance, to send out a emergency notification reminding folks to stay out of that area. And then the other thing is, we're probably all sick of sending emergency notifications related to COVID, but if you're not doing a good job there, at this point, a year into the pandemic, the Department of Education is going to have very little patience for an institution that claims not to have understood its obligations around notifying folks about the dangers that a pandemic represents. And we've got an item on our website that guides you to how to operationalize emergency notifications. It's on our resource tab. So that's as I look down the road, that's what I see, Devin. Yeah, those are my probably big three.
Yeah, and I would honestly probably agree with those as well. They sound like probably the most important things that everyone needs to kind of be paying attention to. So I think that'll really help. Okay, so that's kind of the questions we wanted to ask you for just the new year, any changes, and then anything we need to be thinking about. For the next part, we're going to be jumping into the ARMS side of things. Like I said, this is going to be kind of a quick, brief overview of it. You can get this information from older webinars that we've done in the past, just the Clery code setup and Clery reporting and mapping portal. But I still want to go through it just for anyone who hasn't seen it yet to make sure you know what you need to be entering in. So for the first part, that's going to be the code setup, mainly locations and crime codes. Locations, you need to pick what kind of Clery location there is, or what kind of Clery location that geo file is in your ARMS system. You'll have 5 choices to pick from. Just choose the radio button that matches that location. And then for crime codes, you'll need to enter the student right to know, the Clery type. You'll see that data in there in a dropdown. The Clery Act data is the name of the dropdown. And then you would just choose if you want that crime code to show up on your daily right to know as well. Then after that, it's going to be case report and arrest data entry, and then actually pulling that information through Report Center, where you can find your ASR report, and then the mapping portal, where you can find your daily log, or where you can have your daily log automatically upload. So let me get out of this, and then I'm going to jump into ARMS itself and show you that through there. So we'll move that over there. This is ARMS Mobile. We went through the code setup. That's pretty easy, and everybody should have it done by now if you're already on the Clery reporting part of it. Again, if you aren't, let us know, or you can check out the older webinars at arms.com/webinars. But we're going to jump into case management. We're going to go into case. And I'm going to choose one of these. We're going to choose this aggravated assault with a firearm and jump into that one. Now, this should already be filled out. I just want to show you the fields that are going to be important. You want to make sure that your dates are all correct in here, and then also your location. Remember, we talked about setting up your location with a specific Clery location type. That's where this is going to pull in. So I've got Parkwood Hall as a student and residential facility. So that's how ARMS is going to know where this location or where this crime happened, what to put it into whenever you pull your ASR report. All right, we'll go down one, and now you've got the incidents tab. And this is where you're going to put in that crime code that we talked about before. Again, this is where, when you put in your student right to know or the Clery Act data code for your crime code, and then chose if you wanted it to show up on your student right to know report, that is all going to pull in from this incidents tab. And then the rest of this information doesn't really matter for Clery purposes. The only other thing is going to be for an arrest, but we're going to jump back to that in a second. So you've got your dates, location, your incident, and then you'll come down for the UCR Clery tab. And then I've already got this review filled out, so I'm just going to click to open it back up and check it out. For Clery, you don't have to worry about any of this up at the top. It'll probably default this crime code right here. But if it doesn't, you can go in and just select the crime code. But you'll want to make sure to put that crime code in. You don't have to worry about these four for Clery. Just scroll down, and then you've got your information for the Clery Act and arson. So here, if it's Title IX, Save Act, if it's related to VAWA at all, that's where you would come in and check those boxes. Did a forcible or non-forcible sex offense occur in addition to an already counted murder or manslaughter? If yes, you would choose that, and then select the sex offense that was included as well. Then aggravated assault, that pulls from this crime code that you've got right here, and this pulls from the crime code that you put on the incident tab in the actual case. So as long as you have that crime code set up, it'll do all of that for you to get this Clery crime type in. Then if it is a hate type, you would choose what kind of hate crime it was. And then if it was an arson, that's where you'd enter in any other information regarding that arson. Okay, so let's go back to our case real quick. That's it for adding in that type of Clery crime. You've also got drug law, liquor law, and weapon possession. For any of those, drug law, liquor law, or weapon possession, you need to report those with an arrest or referral. So that'll come into the name section. Since this incident is an aggravated assault with a firearm, that's categorized as a weapon possession law. So we'll come to names. We would go to arrested person right here, and you would need to make sure that their involvement is that they were arrested. And then let me get this out of the way for a second. Then you would come down to click add arrest. You can see I've already added one. You would hit add arrest. And then it'll open that arrest tab up. Now in here, you'll want to make sure you put your date in there, make sure you have your arrest location, and then we would come down to charges. Here, you would choose your charge, which this one's just an aggravated assault with a firearm. And you would just choose, you would type it in this spot, choose it, and hit add charge, and then come down to UCR statistics right here. And the main one that you want to pay attention to is going to be your stat code. Booking and referral, that is going to determine what it shows up as on the ASR. So if this was an actual arrest, we'll do book. I'm going to put referral for this one. All right, we'll save that information. Again, in this arrest, you want to make sure you've got the date, location, the charge or charges, and then your stat code. So we'll jump back to the case. And now that's it for what you need to do for a case report. Real quick, just again, for anything that isn't a drug law, liquor law, or weapon possession, you would want to jump in, make sure your dates and locations are good, make sure your incident is correct, and then fill out that Clery review. If it is a drug law, liquor law, or weapon possession, you would need to put in an arrest, and in that arrest, add a date, location, charges, and then the stat code of booked or referral. All right, so now we've got that information added in. Let's pull that information in two ways. The report center is going to get you your ASR. It'll also get you your Clery daily log if you just want to pull the report, but most departments will use the mapping portal for that. So let's go into report center. And then in report center, we're going to come over to our Clery statistics tab, go to canned reports right here. And then we've got our student right to know report right there. We'll click on that and it'll load up. All right, now we'll pick our year. I'll just do this year. You can filter it by site if you need to. Otherwise, we'll hit apply. All right, now you'll be able to see you've got an aggravated assault right here, and it is marked as on-campus residential facilities since I had it at Parkwood Hall. Then we'll go to the next page. This is going to be the number of arrests or referrals. I've got a judicial referral right here for a weapon possession or weapon violation, and it's on-campus residential. All right, and the last page, this one's for VAWA. I should have clicked to add it, but if you had selected any of those radio buttons in the Clery review for domestic violence, dating violence, or stalking, that's where it would show up in here. All right, so you go into Report Center to get your student right to know report right here. And then, like we talked about, your mapping portal is the way to pull your Clery daily log. So we can come over here. If you aren't set up with the mapping portal, we can set you up. Just let us know if you're interested in that. I've got my test one set up here. Just be aware none of this information is real. It's all just test data that I put into my system. So I've got right here an alarm showing. I've got an aggravated assault. I've got 6 at this location where I can just tab through all 6 of them. And you might see that I have accident and alarm both showing up on the map, even though those aren't a Clery reportable crime. That is going to be where you get to choose what crimes show up on here and which ones don't. So if you want only Clery reportable to show up, then you can have that show up here. If you want an alarm or an accident to show up, you can as well. So I've got it set up where you can zoom out and it'll just show the heat map of where those offenses are, and just zoom in to see them one at a time. If you don't want to view this in the map view, go over to details and view it just like this, and this turns it into sort of a Clery daily log that you would normally see. You can even hit print and it'll look exactly like a Clery daily log, where you can add in all the information that is required for a Clery daily log report. All right, let me close that. I do want to jump in and just show you kind of the back end of this. I don't think we did that during the first webinar. So if we go over to, I'll zoom back into where we were. And I'm going to go into my settings right here. You can change your name, put in the information and all that. The main ones I want to look at though are report settings right here. You've got include in cases, or include the cases on the map, include arrests, include incidents, meaning CAT events. You've got include cases with any approval status. And then you can exclude juvenile, sex offense, and confidential from there. And then if you come down, this is where you just choose what specific crime codes you want to show up on there. You would just go to each one of them, click the checkbox if you do want it to show up on the map, and don't click the checkbox if you don't want it to show up on the map. All right, and then that'll sync daily. We normally set it up to sync just every day at 6 a.m., but it also will give you 2 days, so 48 hours before that sync to before it posts that crime on your map. So you've got 48 hours, which is what Clery allows. You've got 48 hours to go through, final approves, go through, make any changes to a case before the sync pulls it up on the map. You can also set the map to show the last 60 days, which is what Clery requires. So you can take your map and use that URL and put it on your own department's website, so that people can go to your website and say, oh, there's a URL to their Clery daily log, and they can click on it and either see your map or your detail view. And then going off of that, one other cool feature is the agency layers right here. You can see I've got mine kind of messy, but if I maybe remove this one, it might look better. But this is a way for you to basically draw on your map however you want. You can have it to where it shows on the actual map. So the one we looked at before, the Google map, you can click to show it on the map. Neither of mine are showing on there. but it's just a way to come in and you can label your on-campus areas, your on-campus residential with a different color, and just show that with the map. If I come in and I want to add more to this, all you have to do, if you want to just zoom in, maybe I just want to get this building, draw a polygon on there, and there you go. Now you have a way to just say, this is an on-campus student residential facility, and get very specific with it for each building, each area of campus, and different stuff like that. All right, let me go back to this page. And really, that's all I wanted to show you guys. I just wanted to kind of walk through the different aspects of Clery again. Let's go back to our PowerPoint, and I am actually going to pass it over to Jason, and we are going to jump into some examples. Sorry, did someone say something?
Devin, it's Mike. Before you leave that,
yeah.
I just want to talk about how important that is for, if an agency is a sworn law enforcement agency and has some type of extended jurisdiction, how important that is to standardize the layers function, to standardize the boundaries of the patrol jurisdiction or the patrol zone. The handbook called two different things. When we work with institutions, it's not uncommon at all for us to ask the chief what the patrol jurisdiction is, get one answer, ask the question of the Clery compliance coordinator, get a second answer, and then ask the evening duty sergeants and get still a third answer. And if there's a tool that can quickly lay out whether an agency assist for a robbery should be identified as an agency assist or should be identified as a patrol zone robbery, this is that tool. And we find a lot that other agency assist, miscellaneous, all those general catch-all categories that make it easy for me not to have to write an incident report contain reports of crime. And over and over and over again, the Department of Education finds that institutions have, I don't want to assume any malicious intent, but the departments have failed to disclose crime in their daily crime log that they were aware of because of this issue of patrol jurisdiction and miscellaneous or OAA or whatever it's called. And I did not get paid to endorse that.
Not enough, at least.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we made this for too, just the layers to be able to easily define those areas within your department, and everybody, like you said, everybody be able to see it and agree on it. All right, so let's jump back into that PowerPoint. Like I said, I'm going to pass it over to Jason, and then we are going to look at some Clery examples.
So to give you guys a little bit of an idea, the way I sort of handle a lot of things with the support staff when it comes to Clery questions and things like that, I like to train my guys up on Clery as much as possible. We want to be able to provide our customers with our Clery knowledge as well as our ARMS knowledge. So that's where kind of the two things collide. There's one question of how does Clery want this reported? And then the second question that usually follows that from my point of view is how do I make it do that in ARMS? So that's where our support kind of specializes in there. But we do get questions that are a little more different sometimes. We get questions that aren't the cookie cutter incident that gets reported 20 times a week at every department. So what we've done is we've grabbed a few sort of unique situations that our customers had brought to us. Don't worry, we've changed all the names to protect the innocent. But these are questions that we've gotten that we wanted to post to Mike and Margolis Healy to get their perspective on it, and hopefully it'll help you gain some perspective on how how Clery is working and how that's going to function within ARMS and things like that as well. So we have 4 examples. Devin's got sort of a little byline for each of those listed there. The first one, to kind of give you all the full scope of what we're looking at there. This is sort of the situation. A department has a student that reports every Friday for the last month that they were assaulted. So they come in once, they report that over the last 4 weeks, they've been assaulted 4 times. But it's only reported once. How should the department report this on their Clery daily log? So with that sort of in mind, Mike, do you have any tips and tricks of how to report that for a daily log situation?
Yeah, so I would hope that the incident report narrative, and it's been my experience, this hope may sometimes be in vain, the incident report narrative chases down some obvious questions here. So we've got an assault. That's a pretty vague term. Is the assault a simple assault? Is it an aggravated assault, or is it a sexual assault? The reason that that's important is because in the latter 2, we have a Clery Act crime statistic, a crime data point, or maybe 4 crime data points. And in the first case, a simple assault, an open hand slap or a shove, that simply is a daily crime log entry. We don't really know what the geography is here. So where did it happen? Was it in the victim's dormitory room or residence hall? Was it a bully in the ground shop picking on one of his coworkers and shoving him around? So geography is missing there. That's going to be important. And then I think the third thing that I would ask is the 4 times really the 4 times? So when we apply the Clery Act's separation of time and space rule to this, if it happened one weekend, was it one slap, or is the victim telling you that, yeah, it happened last weekend, and then when you drill down a little bit on it, it actually happened on Saturday afternoon, Saturday as shift was changing, and then Sunday in the ground shop again. So what we're hearing is not one report. It happened on one weekend, but what we're hearing is 3 separate incidences because of the time and space separation rule. And that's a concept borrowed from UCR. So if you're from an agency that's, I guess nobody uses UCR anymore, but they used to use UCR, you're familiar with time and space separation. That's a topic for another day.
All right. Let's go and move ahead to our second one here. So this is one that we get a lot. The offenses occurring in a different year than the reported time of that. So just to kind of give a breakdown for anybody who's unaware, a situation that could be similar would be if a student was assaulted in 2020, but they didn't report it until this year, 2021, in case this video gets watched future years. How should they report that on their daily log versus their ASR? So basically, stat reporting wise, is this falling based on time reported or time occurred?
Yeah, it's a great question, and hopefully as the uniform crime reporting system slowly dies and people forget about it, the uniform crime reporting system required that you adjust your crime data for the prior year. The Clery Act has never done that, but for agencies that were doing both UCR and were doing Clery Act data, sometimes it was confusing, and it actually led to data variances that were easily identifiable to the lay public, right? If you only had one rape and you UCR'd it in 2020 and you Clery'd it in 2021, that's going to lead to an obvious question. And it's in the nature of the way the regulations are written. But you summarize it properly, Jason. Clery Act crime data is always disclosed by reported date. So if the student comes in early January and reports that they were assaulted in December of the prior year, that's a January daily crime log entry, and that is a 2021 crime data point in the ASR disclosure.
Sounds great.
Mhm.
And one of the things to point out from an arms perspective too is you don't have to really worry as much about that specific question as long as you're putting in all your data correctly as far as reported on dates versus date occurred from and to. The arms Clery reports will handle that for you automatically.
To that point, Jason, we find a lot that, and this, I'm going to lay this responsibility exactly where it lives, at the feet of the patrol sergeants or the shift sergeants and the patrol lieutenants. We find over and over again that crime reported dates get confused with crime occurrence dates. So the student who comes in on January 5 and reports to the police department that they came back to the campus last night and found the door to their room kicked in. It's not uncommon at all for us to find that the date of the occurrence of that burglary is January 5 when we know that it's not. It was sometime between when the student left for break and when the student came back on January 4. Very common mistake, and one that is going to be very expensive if you're not tracking.
All right, let's jump over to the third one here. This one is kind of surmised as an outside police department helping a student on campus, but once again, to kind of give you a situation where something like this could occur. If a department has a student call the city police department for a burglary that occurred at their house or their residence is within the campus's jurisdiction. So, you know, I'm living on campus, I'm been burglarized, I call the greater city PD, whatever the name of my city may be, and they come in and report and kind of take my case report and everything like that. How is that supposed to be reported for Clery purposes, Mike?
Yeah, so the Clery Act regulations say that a crime is reported when it's brought to the attention of a campus security authority or the local police. So from a Clery Act compliance perspective, and it's a highly technical point, that crime has been reported to the university when the local police know about it. We all know that many times, especially with minor things like hate crime vandalism, the local police department may not even know that they have an obligation to move that stuff along to the university. So there are a couple of places that we commonly look. The first one is there an MOU or even a practice that allows for the local police and the university to share information in near real time? If there isn't, we would recommend that there be. And if there isn't, and there is not going to be, and sometimes the local police may not want to share data in real time, the university has an obligation annually to reach out to the local police to gather crime data. Remember that good faith part of the data collection stuff for your annual statistics. If the police department, and we see this commonly with low-level things like hate crime assault, hate crime intimidation, hate crime vandalism, you know, motor vehicle may be damaged because it's got the vehicle's obviously affiliated with a member of a protected class, and then somebody does something antithetical to that group. These things tend to come in at, in February. They tend to come in March when you've made your request for the 2020 data and the local police are providing it. If you don't have a police report or a campus security report or a campus safety report at the time of the incident, it has still been reported to you. Let's imagine, for sake of conversation, that the burglary in this case took place in February of 2020. The local police never let the university know about it. In January of 2021, the university reaches out to the local police, and the local police provide a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet contains this reported burglary from February of 2020. In February of 2021, that crime has been reported to the university. So there should be a daily log entry. And there should be a data point in the 2021 crime data for that burglary.
All right, sounds good. For our last example, we're going to talk about it's you actually hit on a little bit earlier when we were talking about the mapping portal a little bit there, Mike. But one of the questions we're getting a lot of things about here in the past year or so is patrol jurisdictions and how that affects reporting for your daily log entries and anywhere else. So to kind of give you all an idea of what we're talking about there, if a department has an area that is considered off campus, but is within enough proximity of campus that the campus police sometimes patrol it, even though it's not their primary jurisdiction, should they report anything in that area that occurs on their daily log? So once we've left that fine golden line you were talking about earlier of the edge of the campus and we're in our patrol jurisdiction, what are we reporting that occurs there?
Yeah, so all crime that's reported to the university's safety agency, be it security, public safety, or police. And I've got a colleague of mine who works at a large university in a major urban center, high crime urban center, and his officers are forever self-dispatching to help the local police. So they are in the patrol jurisdiction and they see down the street flashing lights, and they drive down and the local police officer says, hey, can you give me a hand? There was just an armed robbery here. Can you go down to the intersection of First and Main and set up a perimeter there? And the campus officer goes down there and closes the intersection. That's actually a robbery in the patrol jurisdiction that's been reported to the university. And that needs to be in the daily crime log. The fact that you may call it an OCA or OAA or miscellaneous or general services or whatever term you're using to hide crime, stop it. It's going to get you into trouble.
Yeah. Mike and I have had a lot of conversations about this since we've been setting up these webinars. And one of the key things he points out, as well as that we notice too, are sort of those placeholder incident codes that a lot of departments will use. It happens a lot more in CAD, obviously, because those are kind of your quick data entry measures. But using those sort of placeholder codes, like Mike mentioned with the OAA and things like that, by not getting more specific with it, you're, as Mike said, you're hiding crime, which is never good. But also, more importantly, from an arms point of view, is we've talked a little bit about how all of these gears sort of turn automatically. So when you start creating things that have Clery attributes to it, it's going to start pulling into your daily log automatically, or pull into your mapping portal, as Devin showed you earlier, automatically. When you switch out a robbery for an OAA or for whatever other code you may be using at the time, those gears don't turn. You know, you've diverted the stream away from that, and it won't get reported correctly to your daily log. So that's one tip that I've heard Mike use a few times that I would also kind of impress upon our users, is to move away from using those sort of placeholder incident codes in your system. Get specific with it, because that specificity is going to move on to how these automatic reporting is going to occur. All right. Let's see. We ran a little bit long here. You want to do maybe a couple questions real fast, Devin?
Yeah, let's do, I think we got enough time for maybe 2.
Yeah, so if anybody would have any questions kind of based off what we've been talking about, you know, feel free to chat in. We'll try to answer any questions you may have. And while your gears are turning on possible questions there, I'll pontificate a little bit further about that kind of crime code setup that we were talking about a second ago. A lot of our customers, when you're setting up your crimes in ARMS, one of my least liked aspects of our reports is that we do have a daily log report in ARMS that's based purely out of CAD. Anything that I could tell you from a training aspect of working with Clery inside of ARMS, don't use that report. I'm lobbying to have it removed anyway. But if you look at that report, you hold it up next to any daily log that you would see posted, it's missing things. That report does not have data occurred from to some of these fields that you're required to have for your daily log entries. There are a couple in there that are based off of case management. You'll see a student right to know case log, daily log, and there's also a Clery daily log case management that's in ARMS. Those would be the two to use. If you're producing your daily log out of ARMS directly, you would want to use those two. The ASR or the ACR, I always get my acronyms all thrown up. The SRTK is what we would call it in ARMS. That one's obviously just fine. That's going to only pull out the data that you need. But the daily log, make sure we're focusing on using that case data. And that means you're going to be generating that data out of your case data, which means that if you have any of these outside agency reports that you're putting in, put those into case. Don't create CAD entries for them. I've run through all of my hot tips for Clery reporting in ARMS.
And Jason, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to have to close it down. We've got it at 1:57 right now, but we have to end it at 2. So I want to go ahead and just let you guys know, if you do have any questions or anything, you can always reach out to us. We've got Margolis Healy's information right here on this page. Let me close that here. Let's move right there. So if you need to reach out to them about getting a Clery audit or finding out help with an audit or information on anything from them, you can reach out to them at any of these places. And then we've also got on the next page the information for ARMS if you need to reach out to us for any questions regarding this webinar too, or regarding Clery in general. Be sure to reach out to us. Otherwise, we should be good to go. Mike, do you have anything else to add before we close it down?
Well, first I want to wish everybody health in this challenging time. And I want to remind folks that we have a white paper on reimagining 21st century policing in the post-George Floyd era, imagining 21st century campus policing in the post-George Floyd era. That white paper is on our website, and I know a lot of institutions have made good use of that as they struggle to manage or defund the police and some of those challenges. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Everybody, have a great rest of the day. Stay safe, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.